Hey everyone, welcome back. My name is Taylin. I'm a registered dietitian from Tacoma, Washington, and this is Dietitian with a Mission. Today, our featured ingredient is the quintessential fall vegetable, pumpkin. Since I'm filming this video in August, there weren't any available fresh pumpkins for me. So for our 3 recipes today, we're gonna be using canned pumpkin, that's just pure pumpkin puree. However, any one of these recipes can be substituted using your commonplace grocery store pumpkin, the sugar pumpkin or the pie pumpkin, by slicing it, roasting it in the oven, and then creating your own puree. I would opt for this version if you have the time because roasting it in the oven is going to really caramelize the natural sugars that are found in the pumpkin and give it this charred smoky flavor if you leave it in there long enough to get a little bit of that golden burnt edges to the pumpkin. That's gonna really elevate each one of these recipes with an extra layer of flavor. But today we're using what we got, and that's gonna be our canned pumpkin. So my 3 recipes for you are Smokey pumpkin vegan chili, a sweet and smoky pumpkin hummus, and a maple cranberry pumpkin oatmeal. All 3 of these recipes are incredibly simple to make. They can all be made under 30 minutes. In fact, 2 of these under 10 minutes. And they're all a great way to feature a fabulous fall veggie. So let's get to it. As you can see, we've got our ingredients for the pumpkin chili first, but I want to give you a couple alternative options, okay? I already mentioned using fresh pumpkin and chopping that and roasting that in the oven. You do not have to turn that into a puree. If you want those nice chunky pumpkin bites to sink your teeth into, then keep it at 2 cups cubed pumpkin. Once you've roasted it, you'll add it into the chili, or you can cook it in the chili itself. Just make sure you're doing it long enough to make sure that they're soft, okay? So that's one option. The other option is you can add jalapenos to your pepper mixture. Now I'm going easy on the spice today. I'll just be using my spices, but if you like it extra kick, add a jalapeno pepper to it. This is a vegan chili recipe, so there will not be meat. However, if you want to add 1 pound of pork or turkey or chicken or beef to your chili, definitely go ahead and do that. There should be enough liquid to not compromise the integrity of the chili, but you might need to adjust the liquid when you add the meat. The other unique aspect of this chili is that there are actually no tomatoes. So if tomatoes upset your stomach, or if there are no tomatoes in your home, this is gonna be a really great chili option because it's tomato-less. That being said, if you're like, chili without tomatoes isn't chili, Taylin, I kind of agree with you. So what you'll do is you're gonna reduce your broth to 1 cup instead of 2 cups, and then you're gonna use your can of diced chili. And if you really wanna elevate the flavor, use fire roasted not canned chili. You're gonna use a can of diced tomatoes. If you really wanna elevate your flavor, get fire roasted diced tomatoes. Okay, another rendition is different types of spices. So I'm gonna be using some chili powder, some ground cumin, some smoked paprika, and some cinnamon. But if you wanna do another spice blend, you can certainly do that. They all should pretty much balance and complement the sweetness of pumpkin. Of course, you can always change out your beans. You could do kidney beans of both colors, light and dark. You could just do black beans, that's up to you. But my final modification for this pumpkin recipe to give you that next level is that if you're okay with drinking alcohol or consuming alcohol, try out a pumpkin beer, like a pumpkin IPA or pumpkin maybe like amber, something that's got a lot of texture and richness and character to it, and replace half of the broth with a can of pumpkin beer. That's gonna give your chili an extra pumpkin-y punch. Okay, so this is my mise en place for what I'm going to be preparing. Let's get into it, and I'll show you each ingredient. So we've got 1 medium onion. This has been diced. I'm using a white onion, but if you have yellow or sweet, it'll all work. I have 1 largish to medium pepper, chopped up. It ended up being about a cup. We're gonna be using salt and pepper, and I happen to have some fancy Alderwood smoked sea salt, so I'm gonna be using this salt just to give it an extra smoky flavor, but you can of course just use regular sea salt, okay? I've got a can of black beans, a can of kidney beans, 3 cloves of garlic. If you do not love garlic as much as I do, then you can use 2 cloves. Whatever oil you have, I've got like a light olive oil. And then, like I said, some spices. We got some classic chili powder. I'm adding cinnamon, which is a unique touch to this chili recipe. Some cumin and some paprika, which I need to go grab. I already mentioned the pepper. And then you can top it with several different herbs. I'm gonna be using cilantro and green onions, which are pretty standard for a chili recipe. You can add some Mexican crema or some sour cream. You can also add some avocado on top of your chili. And if you are open to eating cheese, feel free to add some shredded cheese on top, okay? So it's gonna be pretty simple. And then we also have, I forgot to mention, our broth. I'm using vegetable broth, but if you're not following a vegan lifestyle, then you can use chicken broth or even beef broth. So starting with our stove, heating that up. If you didn't already create your mise en place, of course do that. Wash all your vegetables, chop them well. Make sure that your onions and your peppers are roughly the same-ish size, okay? If they're really different sizes, they're gonna cook at different rates, and you might have like well-done onions and then really raw peppers, and that's not what you're looking for, okay? So once your pot has some heat on there, we're gonna add a couple tablespoons of olive oil, or whichever oil you have in your home. Bloop, bloop. You know, 1 to 2 tablespoons is fine, just enough to give your onions a nice saute. Make sure that you wait until your oil heats up, and to do this, you should see these really fine ripples in the pan. That means that it's getting hot enough. You don't want to get it to a smoke point though. That means it's too hot. Another way you can test to see if your pan is ready and your oil is hot enough is simply by taking a small piece of your onion or pepper, dropping it into the pan, and you should hear a sizzle. If you hear a sizzle, you know it's ready. So let's try it out. No sizzle. So I'm gonna give it a few minutes and then we'll dump everything in. Okay, so I don't know if you can hear, listen, my onion is starting to sizzle, but I'm gonna drop this one in so you can hear exactly what it's supposed to sound like. You hear that? That's your sizzle, okay? So we're ready to go. Our oil is bubbling. I'm getting ripples, no smoke. It's like my favorite sound when it comes to cooking is when the onions hit the pan. I just love it. I'm gonna give my onions like a 1 to 2 minute head start just so that they start to caramelize and brown. This is really important when you're cooking and you're trying to get a depth of flavor, is letting certain vegetables cook longer to release the flavor, release the juices. I heard a chef on YouTube call it blooming. We're blooming the flavors out of the aromatics or the vegetables that give our dish taste and character. So for the garlic, I'm just gonna slice them here, and then I'm gonna go across the other direction to chop them up. If you've got a garlic press, kudos to you. Use your garlic press. I try not to use more instruments that I have to wash later. Okay. My onions are starting to get some color. I'm gonna pull out one to show you. See how it's getting a little bit of brown? That's what we want. The reason why I didn't add the garlic quite yet is because the garlic is in a much tinier piece, or much tinier pieces, so it would cook too fast and it would burn. In a soup or chili recipe, when you want the flavors to really build, you're gonna also add your spices to the pot with the oil. Don't wait to add your spices to the liquid because it is that direct high heat that give the spices their full flavor. It's similar to like if you just ate cinnamon plain, it's almost awful if you were just to eat cinnamon. But when you put cinnamon into something and it's got a lot of heat to it, it really blooms out the flavor. So after the majority of the onions brown up a bit, which I would say is now. We'll add our peppers, our garlic, and our spices. So I'm gonna do 2 tablespoons of chili powder. This is just a general like spicy chili powder. You could use medium or mild. 2 tablespoons of that. If you've got like a special chili blend where you want to use like ancho chili or some other kind of great Mexican chili, then definitely try that. Teaspoon of cumin. Oh, this is my cinnamon. So easy to get mixed up on that, you guys. Teaspoon of cumin. And I'm just gonna do a half a teaspoon of cinnamon. And then half a teaspoon of smoked paprika. Okay. Oh my gosh, this smells amazing. Come check this out. This looks fabulous and it smells incredible. Incredible. I'm gonna let these spices and the flavor bloom for about a minute or so, and then I'll add my broth and my pumpkin. And since I don't have fresh cubed pumpkin or pre-roasted pumpkin, just 1 can of puree. So people always assume that canned items are really unhealthy, and that's just not the case. It's not the case at all. Canned pumpkin is just canned pumpkin. There's no added sugar, there's no added salt, it's just pumpkin. So whether you're getting your pumpkin puree from a can or making it from scratch, it works. It's gonna work for this recipe. Okay, at this time, my chili pot is bubbling. Can you hear it? So I'm gonna add my beans. I already drained the liquid and rinsed them, so that part's done. Now, here is where everything comes to taste, because I normally get low sodium beans, but that wasn't an option for whatever reason. So these are full sodium beans, but I did rinse them. So I'm just gonna be very easy on the salt until I taste it. And if I decide that it needs more salt, I can go back and add it. But if you get no salt added beans or low sodium beans, you might need a lot more salt. So I'm just gonna do like a light pinch. That's it. And then once the flavors develop, after simmering for about 15-20 minutes, I'll taste it and add more salt if needed. I will go ahead and add fresh cracked pepper though. And I like lots of this. At this time, you want to go ahead and turn it down to like a low medium, because we're not trying to cook anything now. Everything's already cooked. We're just trying to let the flavors open up. I would say overall though, this is like a very, very fast recipe. Very easy. It's almost what you would call a dump recipe, where you just dump everything into a pot. That makes it so simple. It looks gorgeous. Ooh, serve this with some cornbread? Yes, please. Go ahead, put the lid on. Like I said, make sure your heat's to low. I will chop up my toppings, my onions, my cilantro, and then, like I said, if you have like some avocado or crema, you can get that ready for serving. And I'll just bunch all of this together. In hindsight, since there's no acid to this dish, I actually might add some lime juice. I'm gonna taste it first, but usually we need a little bit of acid in a dish to give it some brightness. So acid is gonna be things like vinegar, tomato, lemon, lime, any kind of citric substance. And it gives our dish a bit of brightness. Okay, my garnish is done. Bloop. And that's it, folks. Our second recipe is a smoky and sweet pumpkin hummus. For the ingredients, we've got, of course, our canned pumpkin. We've got some chickpeas. I'm doing a mixture of tahini and almond butter this time. I think it's gonna give it a unique nutty flavor. I also don't have enough tahini. So we're gonna try something new this time. I think it's gonna work. And then we've got some garlic. I actually only need 2 cloves for this guy. And then the same spices, almost the same spices that we use for the chili. I have a half a teaspoon of ground cinnamon, a half a teaspoon of smoked paprika, and a half a teaspoon of cumin. And then of course like salt to taste. Is that everything? Yeah, lemon juice. And the tahini has a lot of natural oil. So I'm gonna start off without adding the olive oil, but I'll assess the texture, and if I need more oil, I'll just go ahead and drizzle some olive oil in as I'm pulsing. For this recipe, you do need a food processor. If you have a blender, it might work, but it really depends on the size of your blender and how high the blade is. I have found that oftentimes in my blender, I don't have enough content for it to really make contact with the blade regularly. So I might need to double or even triple the recipe to be effective in a large blender. But if you've got one of those small, like hand blenders that's for individual serving sizes, that should work perfectly, okay? So the steps are simple. Make sure your food processor is off. Dump in 1 can of chickpeas. If you need to do this in batches, if you have a small food processor like me, do it in batches. You only need a half a cup of pumpkin. So in a can, that's like 1/3 of a can-ish. And then your spices. Your garlic cloves. Make sure you cut off the nubby end, you know, where it's all fibrous. About 2 tablespoons. Ooh, no seed, no. 2 tablespoons lemon juice. Oh, I tried to use a leftover lemon, but I might need a fresh one here. So I'll go back and add more lemon juice there. And then your tahini almond butter mix. Like I said, I'm gonna start with just half of some of these ingredients, just so I don't crowd it. But I will add the rest of the chickpeas and the rest of the tahini and almond butter as this works its way down. Whew. Alright. And always make sure to test your food processor before you put everything in, because if you don't set it up right and your food processor won't start, you have all the contents in the container and then you have to empty it all out, and it's a waste of time and a mess and very stressful. Okay, so I pulsed that down a little bit. I almost forgot one of the key ingredients, and that is maple syrup, because this is a sweet and smoky hummus.
I'm adding the remaining ingredients, so it's the rest of my garbanzo beans and my tahini and my almond butter, squeeze more lemon juice, a touch more maple syrup, and then a pinch of extra salt. It does take quite a bit of time to get the consistency you like. You might even need to add olive oil like I did here. And then it's repeating the process, blend and wait.
Okay, so this has been pureeing for quite some time. So it's gotten a lot smoother. So let's see if it needs anything else. That's good. That's really good. I might add a little bit more cinnamon. Yeah, a little bit more cinnamon. And gosh, maybe a little bit more lemon juice. I like it pretty bright. So yeah, maybe 3 tablespoons in total. And a bit more salt. Again, I've got this really cool smoky salt, so might as well make the most of it, right? And then we blend and we taste. Yes. This is what we want. This hummus is tangy, garlicky, sweet, smoky. It's creamy. It's got like all of the characteristics you could want. This is gonna be a fabulous dip because you'll be able to pair it with savory sides, like taking your vegetables, cauliflower, snap peas, carrots, broccoli, and dipping those items into this. But it can also go well with some sweet sides. So if you got like cinnamon sugar dusted pita chips or some sort of herbaceous cracker, I think apples would be great with this. It is a very versatile dip. And what a great way to use over like the leftover bit of pumpkin you have when you make a pumpkin dish that doesn't call for the whole can, which is very common. You can use it for a nice sweet and smoky pumpkin hummus. Let's get to our third and final dish. Our third and final recipe featuring pumpkin today is a fabulous spiced cranberry pumpkin oatmeal. Now, I am a super big fan of doing overnight oats, but I'm gonna tell you why I don't think that works with this particular recipe. I just think the flavor of the pumpkin with the spices bloom more when we cook it. So if you're really into resistant starch and keeping your glycemic index low, make this in the night before and then eat the leftovers and it will keep that down a little bit. Otherwise, let's go ahead and make this overnight oats for same day eating. We have got 1 cup of rolled oats. We also have a 1/2 cup of our pumpkin puree. Again, it can be canned, it can be homemade, whichever you have available. We're gonna use a 1/4 cup of your nut or seed of choice. Now, since it's a pumpkin oatmeal, I'm obviously using pumpkin seeds. We call these pepitas. You can use raw pepitas that are unsalted, but I happen to have toasted, lightly salted pepitas. I'm using a 1/4 cup of dried cranberries. If you prefer raisins, I think that'd also be an excellent option. Dried apples would be another fabulous option. You are gonna need a pinch of salt. Do not skip on the salt. All of these ingredients are low sodium, folks, so it's okay to add some salt to your dish. It's really gonna help bring out the flavors of the pumpkin and of the pumpkin spice. Speaking of which, we're gonna use 2 teaspoons of pumpkin spice, and I'm doing this just as a faster option instead of doing a whole bunch of different spices. So if you wanna do your own spice blend, you can use cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves, ginger, and go from there. I'm using maple syrup because it's like the most fall sweetener, but of course you can use like monk fruit or agave or regular sugar or honey, just whatever works for your taste buds and your diet. The milk of choice for this dish is gonna be soy milk. And I do think this is preferred if we're gonna keep it plant-based over almond milk or oat milk or really any other plant-based milk because of 2 reasons. One, it's got more protein. So when I think about keeping the body full and satiated, the protein in the soy milk is gonna accomplish that mission. I also think this works better because it's got a fat content that's higher than those other plant-based milks, so it's gonna make our dish a little bit more rich and creamy. Now, if you don't do soy, you can of course use almond milk, and then think of another way to add protein. Maybe you do a protein powder, maybe this is just a low protein meal for you. Another option is if you're doing a lower fat milk is to just add a scoop of butter or vegan butter to it, and it's gonna give it a little bit more richness, okay? And then we're using vanilla extract, and that really sets it off. So I'm gonna direct you to the stove. We'll heat up our pot on like a low medium, and I'm gonna toast my oats, okay? A lot of people start with the liquid and they boil their oats, which is fine. But remember, we're trying to maximize fall flavors, and like toasted things are really nice and fall-y. I actually think toasted goes well in the summer too, so this is like a good transition from summer to fall. So no liquid, just the oats, and hindsight, I should have used a bigger pan, but it's not too late. Bigger pot, here we go. I'm gonna use the bigger pot simply because I want a larger surface area. If I'm gonna toast the oats and they're all piled onto each other, they won't toast evenly. So we're not looking for like dark, rich brown color, just a light toasting. Once that starts to happen, we're gonna add our 2 teaspoons of pumpkin spice, because again, that heat is gonna bring out the flavors of our dish. So let's give it some time, and then I'll show you what to do with the rest. My oats are starting to toast, and I can tell because I'm smelling the toasted aroma. And when I stir them, I see a little bit of darker brown oats. They don't like look as pasty. So now that the process is starting, I'm gonna add, oh, that would take forever, 2 teaspoons of pumpkin spice. I feel like in pictures, you'll see people like layer stuff like this. They'll like cook the oatmeal and then they'll put like pumpkin on top and spice on top, and it'll look really pretty for a photo, and then you taste it and it's just like not popping. So it's gonna be best if you mix it all together in the cooking first. So I'm gonna let, oh yeah, yum, smells so good. I'm gonna let this toast for about a minute. Get those spices unlocked. And then we will add our liquids. Add my pumpkin, about a half cup like I said, and 2 cups of milk. A light simmer is fine on the milk, but you don't want it to like be at a constant boil. That means it's on too high. You don't want to scorch your milk. Get our 2nd cup. It smells like pie already. I'm in love. I'm gonna add a sploosh splash of vanilla. If you want to get proper, you can measure it out to a teaspoon. A little bit of salt, I'll do a pinch. Or 2, I'll do 2 pinches. And also the cranberries. Now I like adding cranberries in the beginning because the cranberries are gonna release some of their sweetness. They're also gonna plump up a bit. I like plump cranberries because you know when they're dry, like they get a little bit hard and a little too chewy. I like that. And then finally, a sploosh splash of maple syrup. If you want to get precise, I'd say a tablespoon, and then adjust to taste. Okay, it's a bit soupy right now, so as it cooks, it will thicken up. If you don't like the texture of the oatmeal, if you think it's too runny, then add more oats. Not a big deal. Or you can add some ground flaxseed. It'll thicken it up as well and give you an extra fiber boost, a little bit of those heart-healthy fatty acids. So lots of options to course correct a liquidy oatmeal. Okay, and then I'm just gonna leave it on medium and kind of babysit it a little bit, make sure it doesn't stick to the bottom and burn. Otherwise, I'll just hang out and clean up my space until it's ready to go. So once it starts to bubble, toil and trouble, give it a stir. And then put your heat on low. Now we can just kind of like set it and wait until it becomes the texture and consistency that you like. All right, time to taste. Where's my spoon? First up, the oatmeal. I topped it with some pepitas and some cranberries just for photo aesthetics, you know. Oh my gosh. This is so good, y'all. You're gonna love it. Okay. Next up, the pumpkin hummus. Very nice. Okay. Finally, the chili. That's a keeper right there. That's a keeper. I'm gonna say 10 out of 10 on all of them. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy. See you next time.